Question I wanted to ask you then, like, how do you in this journey where you're going from where you are to where you are going, and that journey, I know, relating it back to one of the videos that I saw, you talked about how to overcome fear, expectations, and those kind of and worries and those kind of emotions. Talk to me about that. What was that like for you, overcoming those emotions and really kind of blossoming into who you really are?
So I think my main I would say weakness was me actually putting too much pressure on myself, me having too much expectation, because that I'm setting myself up for failure, and that was what was going on. And no matter how much I did, I always expected myself to perform better than the other person, and it's almost like I was not treating myself like a human being. Other people are they're allowed to go through stuff. For some reason, I'm supposed to just pick it back up, you know? Yeah. So that was one thing, and I think it just came from me trying to be kinder to myself and be more compassionate to myself. You know what? As much as I want to be successful, I want to be superhuman, this and that, you're a human. Doesn't matter like how successful, how productive, at the end of the day, you're a human. And I think that's like sets my expectation. I was expecting myself to act like the superhuman god level Bruce Lee. Because you know what? In my head, I grew up looking up to Bruce Lee. Yes. And to me, yeah. And he's a human being, right? But he's pushed himself to that limit. Yeah. So I was expecting to me, it's always like, you know, like how an ethnic background as well, someone else has done it. Yeah. So whatever you do is nothing. Yeah. So to me, I was like, oh, well, but other people have already done this. People have landed in the moon. People have created this and this. What have I done? So I would always compare myself to everyone else, and I would have crazy expectation for myself. And I would, even when I am accomplished, I didn't feel accomplished. So what's the point? And from the outside, people like see me, they're like, okay, you've done well for yourself. I didn't feel like that. I felt very small because I expected myself to do more. Yes. Right. Yeah, sometimes we are like our own enemy.
100%.
Yeah.
Why do you think we do that? Why do you think we put those expectations on ourselves? You mentioned about culture. That's a big part of that. Why do you think we stay not treating ourselves like human beings, like people that we actually love and care for?
I think, well, I can only talk from my experience. I'm Asian. So our parents, grandparents, they had a harder life. So whatever we do, it's not going to add up to that, because they lived in survival mode. Yeah. They had to go to different countries without knowing the language, and we can't compare their life. But I think because their life was so hard, whatever we do, we're always going to feel like we're not doing enough. They made sacrifices for us, and now we need to pay for that. So I think in my head anyway, that was the way I thought about it. It's like, I have a good opportunity. I'm in London. I'll get to go to Brunel University. There are people out there in Nepal, they couldn't even go to school, let alone good education. So also I felt like the burden of my country was like, I should be representing them. I have a better opportunity, so I should be working harder. I always felt that for myself. And then I think recently, you know what? Yeah, I am fortunate, but I don't need to feel guilty about it. I don't need to feel shame about it. I felt a lot of guilt and shame just for having a better life than most people, because I only moved here when I was 12. So I've seen the life there. I've seen the life here. So now that I have an easy life, I have opportunities and stuff, it almost felt like, did I deserve this, or did I just get lucky? Yeah, and there is that factor. Yeah, I've been given this opportunity, but I also worked hard for it. I also had to study. Like, it's not like, oh, you go to uni and you just come out with a good degree and jobs. Like, no, I worked hard for it as well. So I think it was like me recognizing my part that I played. It didn't just happen just because I was given this opportunity. I worked for it. So yeah, I think that helped.
So part of letting go was recognizing that you worked hard yourself to gain those things that you had, and those expectations that people were putting on you, and you're putting on yourself. Yeah, they weren't really like warranted, because you were still working hard, you're still growing.
Partly yes, but the other thing is also, if you're privileged, then you're privileged. You can be grateful, but you don't need to feel shamed for it. You don't need to feel guilty about it, because I'm born with, I've got like
2 hands.
Yeah, 2 hands. I've got limbs. Someone is not born with that. Now I'm supposed to feel bad? No, I can do what I can do to help them, but I can't feel bad that, I can walk and you can't, because that's That's my destiny and that's yours. Yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful. Actually, that's beautiful. What are some of the ways? I know that you mentioned about letting go. What are some of the ways you see other people struggling to let go? And like, I know we can only speak from your perspective, but I know that we also have friends or people that we know.
Yeah.
They struggle to let go in their own ways. What advice would you give to those kind of people about like overcoming that?
Okay, I think most people struggle with letting go or just change in general, because it kills their ego. First, they have to admit that whatever they're doing isn't right. And to create a new version of you, you have to destroy the current version of you. And that's the hard part. A lot of people will never want to admit that they're wrong. This is for all the stubborn people who never want to change. Even though, actually, you know what? That's the thing is, a lot of people know they need to change. They know the problems. They just don't want to admit to themselves and to other people. It's hard work. Yeah. And then you have that weird transition phase in the middle where you're like, you know, where I was saying like, okay, I want to be a new person, but I'm not that new person yet. That bit is very confusing, frustrating, and that's when you get tested a lot. Not many people.
Also too.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that's something I relate to. Like when I was like moving from the old version of me to the new version of me, I had to get rid of so many things from that like kept me asleep. So I was like really awaking to the shit that I needed to improve on.
Yeah.
It was lonely, it was confusing. It was like, well, people don't want to go through that.
They don't.
They just wanna go back to normal.
Yeah.
Like they had before.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's sustainable for anyone.
No. But you know,
Go on.
weird thing about like people, somehow the world just goes around. They could, you know, like even if they don't do the inner work or something, they're still living. They still make it to their deathbed. Life is weird. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question.
Yeah.
Here's a question I had then. I know you mentioned briefly about change, right? And I want to talk a little bit about change right now.
Yeah.
About like what happens when you really embrace change. So like obviously we all different versions of ourselves and throughout our lives, right? Yeah. And so for me, for example, what you mentioned, by the way, is like so relatable. Like one that you mentioned about expectations, and I wanted to touch on was about how like especially as guys, we feel like we have to achieve certain things by a certain age. So like for me, I felt like, you know, I see like all these people like, oh, they did this by 25, they did this by 30, they did this. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing in my life? Like I'm like this age and I haven't done anything. And it's like your experience is completely different. Your life is completely different. Your fucking where you're from is different. Like everything is different, but you expect the same results. And so like that was very me. Even now I still have it. Like I get like competitive and I'm like, fuck's sake, I need to be doing more. I need to be doing. But I know the other side of me is also like relax. Like you also like adjust a person. You know, like people tell you you're great, but like first off, if you don't believe you're great, it doesn't matter what everyone says. You know, like that greatness, that ego, and I think that's such an interesting thing that I want to touch onto also. That ego that people have within themselves to kind of, which stops them from improving because they want to hold on. Like the ego always just wants to hold on to stuff, you know. I remember like meditating and listening to this guy called Eckhart Tolle, and he talks a lot about ego and like letting go of ego to embrace people, to embrace life, because
Can I say something?
of course.
Okay. Because you just said like letting go of ego, right? And I think that's like a weird misconception people have about ego. Like ego is something negative. Ego is something that you need to get rid of, which is not true. Ego, what is ego? Ego is what makes you aware of you. Ego is something that will say, I'm Christina, I'm amazing, I deserve this and that. That's my ego. We need ego. Ego is there to protect us. All emotions has a purpose, right? Anger has a purpose, sadness has a purpose. Nothing is just negative. Ego has a purpose too. So for example, let's say I'm trying to belittle you. I'm saying, Jeff, you're shit. Your ego is going to come out. It's going to step up to protect you. Ego is required. Ego is needed. The problem is when it gets to super ego, right? Then you are self-centered. Then you're a narcissist. That's the problem. Everything is to what extent? Everything. Like you say, happy is a good emotion. If you're always happy, someone's beating you and you're like, haha, Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. All emotions have a purpose, and ego is always seen as something you need to get rid of, but that's the ego saying you need to get rid of ego. Yeah, you need ego. You need, it's what makes you self-aware. But yeah, it's ego is not the problem. I think maybe it's the lack of compassion for other people, or just lack of awareness of other people. Maybe that's the problem. But ego itself is,
it's an emotion. It's supposed to, like, it's like an indicator of something you're feeling.
Yeah.
If you're able to, it's how you react with that feeling that matters. Not like, if you just smother it, it doesn't help either, because you still have that feeling. On that point, actually, I want to ask, what is the kind of these negative emotions? Because that's a fascinating point about how emotions have their own things that they're supposed to make us aware of. When you have emotions like jealousy and sadness and like anxiety and depression, what are they? What would you say are they kind of like, what they're trying to make us aware of in our lives when we have these emotions?
Okay. So you have something good, right? I'm a competitive person. I get jealous. You know what it shows? It shows that I have desire for what you want. So it has proven to me like, okay, I want that. So jealousy is not the problem. If I go about it in a negative way and I'm envious of you and I want you to feel that's wrong, it depends on the person's character, right? I can say, you know what? I can notice I felt jealous that he had I don't know, you've got a nice laptop, right? I can use that in a positive way. I'm going to work hard and get myself a nice laptop. It makes me aware of what I want. So it's up to the person. Yeah. And with
depression and sadness,
so when we get into depression and sadness, when we start grieving, our body naturally slows down and it gives you that time to grieve. You're supposed to, something big happens, our bodies are supposed to process that emotion. So that's why we go into that sadness and grief, because we are supposed to be processing that. And the thing with depression is obviously something is wrong. That's why you're depressed. So that's for you to now do the work. Why am I not happy? And change that. If you didn't feel that, then you would be stuck in that reality. And that's it. Obviously, when I was depressed, obviously I wasn't happy with my reality. So yeah, it's an indicator. If you're not happy, then obviously you need to do something about it. You need to change that. You're either not happy with yourself as a person or just your environment. There's something that you're not happy with. Yeah.
I love that. That's brilliant. And that's a great segue for the next point, actually, which is you mentioned about manifesting your reality. What do you mean when you say manifest your reality, and how does that show up for you?
Okay.